I touched briefly on three issues. First, what I see as some of the key catalysts for the innovation economy in the United States. Second, how innovation can affect geoeconomics. And third, some of the challenges that this set of issues presents to us. First, in terms of what I see as the enabling environment for innovation in the United States, I would highlight four factors. First, our education system, an education system that teaches people how to think creatively. It trains students to be able to solve problems, to take new information and figure out how to process it in a creative and analytical fashion. Second key factor that you see in technology hubs such as Silicon Valley is a culture of not only risk-taking, but a culture that accepts failure. It's very important that people be free to try new ideas, to fail, and not to be punished for doing so. And you'll see this throughout Silicon Valley. You'll see people who will work in 5 jobs in 10 years. They've been at a startup for a year or two. It hasn't gone well. They go to another startup. And maybe only on their 5th try, they hit a startup that really has potential for the future. And if they present their resume of having gone to 5 places in 10 years, that'll be viewed very favorably in Silicon Valley. If you did that on the East Coast, which is a bit more traditional in its approach, and you had 5 jobs in 10 years, you wouldn't get a job interview. So it's a very different type of culture that you see in a technology hub. A third factor that I think is very critical in the United States relates to capital markets and our ability to disperse capital quickly at all levels to entrepreneurs and people who have ideas. In the United States, we have an ecosystem from angel investors, the very small investments at a very early stage of an idea, to venture capitalists, to private equity, to institutional investors. I think this is part of what makes America unique in the ability for entrepreneurs to obtain funding for their ideas. And what goes hand in hand with this is a risk-reward system that rewards people who do invest, especially those who invest very early, if they are successful, because a lot of times you'll invest and it won't be successful and you lose your money. And so when you finally invest in a successful startup, you need to be able to be rewarded for that. And that really takes me to the final ingredient I want to highlight for an innovation economy, and that is the need to protect intellectual property. For those people who invest their time, energy, money, and effort in an innovative idea, they will fail a lot of times before ever, if they ever succeed. We always read about the great successes, but there are a lot of people who have tried and are serial entrepreneurs, but don't ever turn out to be that successful. But if you do succeed, you need the certainty to know that your ideas will be protected for enough time to earn back what you invested and more, to be rewarded for the risk you took and for the many times you did not succeed overall. So, in my view, a successful economy for innovation has to have a good education system, a culture that accepts failure and rewards risk-taking, a capital market system that can fund it, and the protection of intellectual property. Now, the second set of issues I want to quickly touch on is the impact that innovation can have on geoeconomics. I see geoeconomics as the use of economic tools to advance geopolitical positions. And while, as was mentioned, a country should try to anticipate areas of research that are important to future economic growth, whether it be how to analyze big data, genomics, other areas, artificial intelligence, robotics, I think we have to all recognize that innovation and its impact is always a bit unpredictable. You really can't scope it out in advance, and you have to let people try and fail in a whole series of different directions. And it also depends how you use innovation. Innovation itself is neutral, but the key is what you do with it. And let me give 3 quick examples. One relates to the energy sector and its impact on geoeconomics and geopolitics. For many years, petroleum resources have been a potent tool in international affairs, and countries with extensive petroleum resources have been able to use that as leverage to achieve some of their objectives in the policy world. And the United States was thought to have a depleting supply of oil, and therefore was vulnerable to leverage from other countries, the OPEC countries and others that had great access to oil. But then through the use of really what was an old technology, but in a new way, what was hydraulic fracturing, or something known as fracking, the U.S. Energy sector has been able to extract enormous amounts of oil and gas from shale rock to the point that the United States now is, I think, much closer to complete energy security and also able to export oil and gas in a way that can strategically help partners and allies of us. So this is a case where a nation state was able to use innovation in a very positive way from its own point of view to achieve its objectives. A second example is the innovation of smartphones and social media. Social media really enables organizations and even individuals to incite activities such as an economic boycott that can affect a company, a city, or a country. And so here's an instance of an innovation in which non-governmental organizations or even individuals were able to use an innovative tool, smartphones and social media, to change the geo-economic equation for a city's operations. They can change a city's policies and practices by swelling up a crowd to take economic activity against them. And my third example is where innovative technology can be used in a very negative way, and that's the innovations that allow, again, individuals, perhaps even terrorists, to do cyber attacks in which you could take down a business, a financial network, a city, or a country with a cyber attack. So this is an innovation that has very negative implications. The point, again, is that innovations are neutral. It's how you use them and how they're applied that matters. And therefore, to conclude, I would just throw out some of the challenges or implications of all of this. Again, I come back to our education systems. I think it's critical that we teach people how to think about innovation, how to constantly innovate. It's often said in a company that you can never relax. You've got to always be looking for the next curve in your innovation to get to survive and to stay ahead of your competition, and also how we respond to the challenges of innovation and how to do all of this with a moral and ethical compass. Secondly, for governments, it's a challenge because the government will never be as nimble as the private sector is. And so we in government have to figure out ways to partner with private sector companies and individuals to really stay on the cutting edge of technology and to, again, be ahead of the curve to a certain degree. And then finally, as was mentioned, how can we work with like-minded countries to foster collaboration in areas of innovation, exchanges among scientists, technologists, applied engineers, and others, and to create the conditions and the culture that there can be sort of a cross-fertilization of ideas of folks who may look at issues differently, but together and collectively can reach a better and more innovative outcome.